Hey, Gremlin Gear. Today I'm going to be talking about how to get a radio and push-to-talk set up on a piece of kit such as a plate carrier or a chest rig. I'm going to cover how to seamlessly integrate this into a piece of kit so that you can radio to mom and let her know that your tidy whities are now brownie wownies. So, I just made a video covering radios for newcomers, beginners, people looking to get into this for the first time. Certain features they should look for while buying, also covering push talk, connector types, and it is a prerequisite for this video. So if you haven't watched it yet, go ahead and watch that video and come back to this one. So what I want to talk about now is you have that radio, you probably already have a piece of kit. How do we get the two to coexist? So now what I want to talk about is you just bought that radio, you already have a piece of kit, now we want to get the two to coexist together. There are a couple ways to get this system to work together. I'm going to show you what I find the best and most user-friendly, also for a price range. Because understand this CommsGearSupply stuff is very expensive once you start getting into it. Good radios aren't necessarily cheap, and good headsets and push-to-talks are even less affordable. So we have to balance all this with a budget in mind, especially for you as a citizen, because that is who I'm making this video for, people who don't really have experience with this stuff to begin with, but they want to have the seamless comms integration. And whether it's just using a SRS walkie-talkie with their friends, they can still use it. It still feels good. It still feels user-friendly, and you want to use it again and again because it works. Now, we also don't want to break the bank while we're doing it. So I'm going to talk about a couple of options that people have and kind of the pros and cons of each, and what I recommend at the end ultimately. So starting out, let's figure out the topology of our system. That's going to start with the radio. So your handheld radio is honestly going to be the thing that determines the rest of the gear, because the type of radio you get is going to determine what kind of push-to-talks are available to you, what type of connector types are available to you, and then possibly what type of headset you need based off of the push-to-talk. I'm going to go ahead and start talking about the handheld radio. This one is a Chinese ham radio or DMR radio that has a Kenwood K-style connector. It looks like this. It's a two-prong connector. I talked about it in my other video, and most Chinese handhelds work with a two-prong connector such as this. There are a lot of aftermarket accessories with these two-prong connector types, all the way from earpieces to push-to-talks, and there are a lot of good companies that are making more military-style wired push-to-talks for these radios, and I'm going to talk about why that's relevant in just a minute. So just understand that my setup is very simple. I'm just going to give it to you right now. It's my handheld radio and a push-to-talk that wires to the radio. The push-to-talk is from CodeRed. It's called a Signal 21 push-to-talk. It's a waterproof, I believe it's an IP68 rated push-to-talk. So it's waterproof, dustproof, and it has a 3.5 millimeter auxiliary port on the side. The reason why that's important, guys, if you're looking into getting a helmet set up or have EarPro, which you likely have EarPro or should have EarPro, or should be saving up to get EarPro if you're out training on the range and have this sort of equipment. Even if you're just someone who plays airsoft, having a really good set of EarPro is really useful for having situational awareness and keeping your comms integrated into a headset where they are private and only you can hear them. For this, I use the Sword Supreme Pro X headphones. I don't exactly remember what I paid for these, but I'm sure they've gone up in price since I bought them. They're very simple. They have gel earmuffs. This is the neckband version, but what's important is they have a 3.5 millimeter auxiliary jack on the back. So yeah, you can plug it up to your iPhone and listen to your favorite tunes while you're out on the range. But what I use this for is it comes with its own headphone jack, and I connect this directly to my push-to-talk. That's it. The audio from this goes into the headset, and then I talk into the push-to-talk to transmit my message. The way that I do this is I don't have my headset connected to a helmet, although that is an idea if you're going to get a bump helmet and put your headset connected to your helmet, or if you can afford a ballistic helmet that is a high cut, you connect your headset to the helmet and then you run that cable down. I have a high cut style helmet. I keep my connector wrapped up here on my mohawk, And this will go into my headset. This is my kind of makeshift down lead that will go into the speaker mic. And that way, whenever I have my headset on, I have my comms. And all I have to do is unplug this and take my helmet off. And I can also just unravel this really quickly if I needed to just run the headset, but that normally doesn't ever happen. And that's it. That's a very basic setup, and I do that to kind of keep the costs low. The most expensive thing that you're going to go out and spend money on is whenever you see guys looking really cool LARPing with these headsets that have boom mics attached to them, and they can have some push talk. They press a button, because you have to have a different type of push talk. You press a button, and you talk into that boom mic. Those headsets, so let's say this one was about $300 or $280 whenever I bought it. Those headsets range anywhere from like $600 to $1,200. There's a lot of reasons for that. Some of those headsets have a lot more features that these don't and are a lot nicer. Some of the Ops Core Amps headsets are the nicest ones out there. Auto Noise Barrier also makes a more budgety type of headset with a boom mic. Comes with an auxiliary cable as well. And I haven't ever used them. They look really nice, but I can't really speak on their behalf. I've never used them before. These are really the only headset and Peltors that I've had experience with. So pretty much the only option besides what I have in front of you is a step up and one step down. And your step up is going to be your $1,000 headset, and then you're going to have to get a NATO wired push-to-talk. There are NATO wired push-to-talks available for these radios, these Chinese radios, through companies like CodeRed, Disco 32, or CommsGearSupply. I'll link to them in the description. These companies, and actually all this stuff has really only became possible in the past couple years as this stuff has manifested, because the consumer market has been so geared towards providing comms stuff for amateurs or people not even running amateur radio stuff, but wanting to have this type of equipment on their kit. And I'm serious, 4 years ago, whenever I was getting into this stuff, these companies were very small, or it was just impossible to find. I know, understand there's a lot of content on this on YouTube. You can find it elsewhere, but they're the best places to look. You can find different types of push-to-talks that do different things, have different connectors, multiple downlink inputs. Sometimes they have Bluetooth on them. And so you can really tailor or customize your radio and push-to-talk system now if you really know what you're doing and you really know exactly what you want. So understand that those are the three companies that I recommend you go to look for that sort of thing. Now, the reason I don't recommend that is because, honestly, this is more my Ear Pro and my Range Ear Pro that I use at the gun range, and I often will use this without any of this other gear for shooting in the flat range, especially if I'm shooting pistol. So I didn't want to have to buy a $280 headset and then buy a $1,000 headset that I wouldn't even really use that much. So the thing is that I understand is that as a citizen, I am not using this gear all the time, and therefore I do need to budget accordingly how much I actually spend into it. You know, buying this stuff is definitely fun in moderation, but don't go out and buy a headset that you can't afford and you're never going to use because you think it looks cool on somebody else. This setup will work fine for what you were trying to accomplish. That is likely the case, and you will be happy and satisfied with it, and you can kind of take things on and off as needed, which is a setup that I like. It means it's flexible. Now, a step down from this would be going with something like little tiny earpieces. You can pretty much buy little tiny earpieces. These don't have a push-to-talk. These are just regular, like a 3.5 millimeter. This is something you would plug into your iPod, and then you can put these in your ears under your headphones. Now, I also see some people who have them with the Kenwood style connector, so the cable connects directly to the radio. It has a tiny, cheap plastic push-to-talk with a little clip on it, and then the earpieces go into your ears. The reason I don't recommend it is because, honestly, you need a good set of Ear Pro. These speaker mics are like $50. You're almost going to be spending half of that on those set of earpieces. Just save up and get the push-to-talk. All the wiring is not worth the money that you save. Those could be really good for some very covert loadout where you're wearing like normal, regular clothes and you have that wired up your jacket, sure. Now having an earpiece in isn't super covert. Maybe you have them hidden, tucked away. I don't know. But in any case, for an overt system like this, I just don't recommend going that route. And plus, those things are so cheap. If something pulls on it, it's likely going to break, and then you're going to be out of a useful comm system. So now I'm going to get into showing you how I actually have this hooked up on this plate carrier exactly. So what I have done, this is a T-Rex Arms AC1 plate carrier, and the only thing that I've added onto it are these Faro Concepts shoulder pads. These add a little bit of padding, a little bit of more thickness, because this plate carrier does not have very thick shoulder straps at all. I can just go ahead and start taking this apart a little bit. They're very thin, slightly padded, but very thin. And then here I have my push talk. And I didn't do anything crazy. I just kind of like figured out how to do this on my own. But the Faro Concept shoulder pads are nice because, like you see, they just kind of tear apart. And these holes are pretty awesome for connecting my clip. So I have my clip connected into one of these holes, and then I have a cable run through the next one. And these holes are just about the same thickness as the cabling, so it's really easy just to slide them through, as I'll show. Now I have the clip rotated 180 degrees so that it's actually really hard, super snug. This thing isn't going anywhere. I'll go ahead and tell you, the first time that I ever had a comm set up on and I wanted to practice with it, I was playing airsoft. And it's pretty great to test out this stuff while doing something that's not very serious, like shooting kids with BB guns. But I actually had this push talk on, and I had it cabled down somewhere, like attached to this molly strap here. And this is a push talk from Prime. I've retired this one as I didn't like some features about it. First of all, I thought the placement of the auxiliary port was nice because it was kind of in line with this cable, but that is about as far as the pros go. This push-to-talk button was very loose and oversized, and it was very easy to depress, and I would often be transmitting accidentally my radio all the time, causing a lot of interference in my buddy's headset. And also, I found that this 3.5 millimeter auxiliary jack was very unreliable and would often come unsnug from my radio, and it would either transmit without me hitting the button at all, or it would just come disconnected and I wouldn't be able to hear anything anymore. I did figure out that it was a problem with the push-to-talk connector, and I also did not like the audio quality coming from the speaker, so I decided to eventually move over into something else. Now I will say, getting into a really dedicated, tailored radio and push-talk system that is good for citizens. I know you've probably heard and seen of these radios before. It is the Hytera line. And the biggest thing about these radios that I personally like is you don't have that problem. You don't have to worry about really securing these K-style connector plugs, which you really have to do. They will come undone if you're not careful. This is the PD782 radio, and the connector is a multi-pin is what it's called, and it only goes in the radio one way, and it has a little tiny screw. Once you set this in place, you twist this a couple times, and this connector cannot come out of the radio. It's wonderful. This is a used cable that I bought. It's gone through a little bit and seen a beating. These also have a Roger tone, these radios, that only you can hear. So that it doesn't actually get transmitted like your walkie-talkies. Whenever you transmit, at the end of it, it sends a Roger tone and everyone hears it. Only you get to hear the Roger tone on these. So it's kind of nice to let you know that you press the push talk, but it doesn't jam up the conversation and make it really obnoxious. But I'll get into more of these radios some other time. Just understand that this is probably the gold standard of connector types, and a really good, durable radio for team comms is a setup like this. Now, getting back into why I like this plate carrier and how I have this cable routed, it's very simple. I can undo this strap, and I actually have this set in extremely snug. And as you can see, this cable comes out pretty easily. This way I can get the push-to-talk freed up and actually unclip it. And what I do is right in the back of the AC1 is this little pocket that kind of just goes down into your plate bag. And I have the cable routed in front of my back plates. It comes down, comes out the bottom, and then I have it routed just through this one loop on the this webbing on the outer bit largest cell. Then I take my K-style plug and I will actually route this thing up through the pouch. So it goes through the entire pouch, comes up and out the other side, and I will click it into the radio. This is a very tight fit. I've also got a larger battery pack on my BTEC radio right now, which makes it a little bit thicker, and this clip gets in the way of it actually sitting all the way down into the pouch. But what I have to combat this, because even if I have the smallest battery pack on, no clip, this radio will jettison out of the pouch. It just happens when I'm moving. I've used this a lot. The only way that I can figure out how to really cinch this down is using some type of a bungee strap. And this is the strap that just comes with any sling you buy from T-Rex Arms. So if you've already got some of their products, you can just use one of these as a kind of bungee retainer. You don't have to do anything special with it. This one's on really tight right now. And all I did was just wrap it into the cummerbund. And now this is a very like slick loadout. I almost never run my plate carrier like this anymore, as it's not the only piece of kit that I own. I like running chest rigs because you can use a lot more. I can take the chest rig off and only have the armor, then put it back on, and also you're just not having to like squeeze so much on such little space with a chest rig. So typically radio pouches on chest rigs are a little bit better. I'm going to show some of the features that I look for with radio pouches and chest rigs. And it mainly comes down to bungee ties and some sort of active retention system so that these aren't flying out. But this is a very tight, compact, and just hard to access system. Probably the hardest part or the worst part about this setup is that once it's all put into place, I actually can't really get my radio out and mess with it all that much. It's extremely hard to try to stuff it back in the pocket while I'm wearing this whole thing. And this is pretty much just making this like permanent. It better be set to the channel that like I need it on, and there better be no other interference or me needing to get out and change the channel or frequency that I'm on, which is not something that I desire out of a radio system. I want to be able to get my radio out comfortably, mess with it as needed, mess with other people's radios as needed, compare the two, make sure everything's good, and put it back in. And often times this is going to be the device you're troubleshooting the most with and you really need access to. So unless you have a radio that you know you're not going to need to get it out that much, this whole plate carrier thing can work for you, great. But I'm going to show some of my chest rigs and how the pouches that I like and how I have that set up. So here's an example of my T-Rex Arms quad flap chest rig, and I'll just kind of go ahead and demonstrate how this stuff works whenever we're talking about a chest rig. This is one of the best examples I think that I have of like a really well-built radio pouch, and it was something that they were designing like very intentionally when making this chest rig. And might actually even get this wrong on the first time, but this radio pouch can expand to fit even larger, like civilian style radios, and they do so with like a bungee cable that you can just kind of fix any way you want, so that this thing won't really jettison out, or it will at least get caught whenever it does. And whenever you're running your push talk on a chest rig, there's not a whole lot of cable management. Probably wondering, what's like the best way to manage the cable, and the best way to manage the cable is by not managing the cable at all, really. Have a little bit of extra material that stays pushed against your body with a chest rig compared to a plate carrier, and it's also going to fit a little bit looser. So essentially, you put your radio in, you put your push-to-talk however you want, and I will have to say, this is slightly less optimized because it is slightly more of like a lower pectoral push-to-talk than like a shoulder mic, which a shoulder mic and kind of just being able to tilt your head over a little bit and talk into the mic is like truly optimized, and that is really what you want. And sometimes this can ride just a little bit lower on like your upper pec, which sometimes isn't exactly what you want. You really don't want like a big button because it will end up getting depressed as you like shoulder your rifle and move around. But really, this is it. You kind of just take your cable and let it rest somewhere in here. And once you put this thing on, you won't even know this exists. And really, this cable doesn't really get in the way of anything. And in my experience, hasn't ever. You can also use like rubber bands or bungee ties to secure it down even more if you want. But it makes it really easy to put this thing on and take it off. And this is a really good like radio pouch design from a manufacturer. Another really good style of radio pouch to look for would be something like this. This is a USGI double mag pouch for 5.56 ammunition. And the great thing is, this does take up a little bit of real estate. It's 2 MOLLE webbing wide. And for me, I don't like for my radio to take up any space on my plate carrier or my chest rig that is out front, because it's just, well, a spot I could put ammunition in. I would rather put something like ammunition or water up front. I don't believe that the radio should take up much space, but this is an awesome setup. It has plenty of room. It's not going to come out in any context, and this is a very secure way of holding many different types of radios. So if you're not sure what to do, try this out. And lastly, to show an example of just yet another bungee style, this is the FLC load-bearing vest that I show on just about every single one of my videos, it seems like at this point, that I really like. And right here, I've just added a simple USGI bungee tie where my radio would go, kind of like it would be on the quad flap. So you can see how these two chest rigs are very reminiscent of one another, eh? And all I have to do is slide this in, and I will say the T-Rex Arms quad flap is a much more like foolproof system. And I bungee this down, and I have something that holds the radio in, holds it in place, and maybe I can run the clip on the outside. This strap also just kind of holds it in place a little bit better. And you can just do anything to really have this thing stay in place. And this way it's out of the way. It's not taking up any real estate on the front of my chest rig. And cable management is the same thing. The FLC actually has a little bit of a pocket that you can just kind of like stuff extra cable into. Or if you don't want to run any of this, set it out here, you can clip it to the side. I'm sure it wouldn't be very comfortable to put it inside, but there you go. And on the front, you can order these off of Amazon. These are like little hydration tube, like Camelback retainers. And all I do is use it to hold the cable in place. So on the front here, it just goes on to a piece of MOLLE webbing. So because the FLC has these weird like horizontal straps right here, you can put one of them there. And then I can do the same thing, but stick this on one of the pieces of MOLLE webbing, and the cable is going to stay right where I want it. The push-to-talk, rather, is not going to articulate on this hinge and swivel all around. It will stay in place and be used nicely for this chest rig. So I hope you found this information useful. I hope and wish you the best of luck on your radio journey. I will highlight a couple of things that I look for. Is a good or great connector type, a ecosystem of connector types, and I really like any sort of kit that allows for me to kind of passively run the radio, where if it's not there, it's not a huge deal. If when it is there, it's not changing everything up front on my chest rig. I don't have to change any of my essential equipment to add or remove the radio. I kind of just like for it to just pop in and out. That being said, I also like having 2 radio pouches because I may want to run a ham radio and some other type of scanner or GMRS or FRS radio, or something that does something out of band from the other one. So actually, I think that dual radio pouches for citizens are very applicable. Although you might not need it, you may really need it one day or want to scale up to 2 radio pouches. So I will typically run like a scanner and then my radio and another pouch, and I can use this for a listening tool, and it's something that just holds it in place. This has a headphone jack. I can plug in those headphones that I showed earlier and run them up to my ears if I'm just sitting in one place and I know that I'm just going to be relaxing and listening for a while. Then I can take all that out and turn this off and put it back in its pouch. And that's the way that I like to run my system. So like I said, hope you took something from this video and this makes your journey slightly easier. So as always, thank you for watching and God bless. The very last thing I have for you guys, a chest rig that makes an exceptional radio pouch is the tap panel. And these come with very good integrated radio wings on the sides. You don't have to add anything. It's kind of like one of those pouches that collapses real small when you're not using it, but it's made to fit big, large radios like emitters and will accept civilian style radios. And they're way out here on the side, out of the way. They have plenty of room for your connector type, and then you can run this up to your H harness whenever you need to. So the tap panel comes really good with these integrated radio pouches, and they have a Velcro cover that allows for a lot of space. Make sure that the radio isn't going to go anywhere.